Tim's News Explosion. 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 Tim's News Explosion.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Tim's News Explosion on this Monday, the 23rd of October, 2023. We are live on the Wilmsfront YouTube channel, the Wilmsfront Odyssey channel, and the Wilmsfront Rumble channel. Remember to support not just this program, but all Unshackled productions. You can send through a super chat donation via Entropy. I've put the link into the live chat there for you to click through. It is 9 p.m. here in Melbourne, Victoria, where a week after the overwhelming defeat of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice at the referendum, it is clear our Prime Minister Anthony Albanese just doesn't get it. Remember that speech that clearly he didn't write on referendum night, saying that he accepted the result of the Australian people. When it came, Parliament was back last week, and obviously Peter Dutton and the opposition asked Anthony Albanese the obvious question: are you still committed to implementing the Uluru Statement from the heart in full, like you said on election night? Are you still committed to a Makarrata commission? There's $26 million, which is being put in the budget already. And this is what Anthony Albanese, his various responses in question time from last week.
Will the Prime Minister be honest and upfront with Australians and inform the House whether or not he remains committed to a treaty and truth-telling process?
What I'm committed to post the referendum is respecting what Indigenous people have said. And what they have said is that they are undertaking a week, which is reasonable for them to deal with what for many people, regardless of what white people voted in this referendum.
Regardless of what white people voted?
Makarrata is simply a Yolngu word for coming together after struggle. I think it's a good thing that people come together.
That's actually a bit of bull, because the principal of Arnhem Land's Yirrkala school, that's in Yolngu territory, has told the ABC that in fact Makarrata literally means a spear penetrating, usually the thigh of a person that's done wrong, so they cannot hunt anymore, they cannot walk properly, they cannot run properly, to maim them, to settle them down. And that actually seems the true agenda of Albanese's Makarrata, doesn't it?
Yes, that definition of Makarrata certainly doesn't sound like it's coming together. And the official Hansard, for where it sounded like Anthony Albanese said, regardless of what white people voted for, the Hansard says regardless of what people voted for. So he said what people, not white people there. And now Pete Ozyman up here has said, does grievance fatigue, as you've termed it, equal closed borders and Fortress Australia? Well, it would be good if we could just focus on issues that are affecting us and not our governments, and not concern themselves with things that are happening halfway across the globe, and obviously wanting to import more people over here who bring their problems with us. And now Anthony Albanese, he said that he respected the Indigenous Australians, the state. Remember the statement that was put out last Saturday night, that they were observing a week of silence to mourn. So Anthony Albanese was saying that he respected that. and basically was saying that he's going to wait until they tell him what to do in terms of what's going to be his future policy when it comes to Indigenous affairs. And they put out this 12-point statement, which the Indigenous Australians who supported the Voice, and it was full of vitriol and abuse. So it has 12 points in total, so I won't go through all of it. The first point says Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are in shock and grieving the result. We feel acutely the repudiation of our peoples and the rejection of our efforts to pursue reconciliation in good faith, that people who came to our country in only the last 235 years would reject the recognition of this continent's first people on our sacred land, which we have cared for and nurtured for more than 65,000 years, is so appalling and mean-spirited to be utterly unbelievable a week following. It will remain unbelievable and appalling for decades to come. Now, it says that apparently what us non-Aboriginal Australians, we're over 235 years old. That's my reading of it there. That people who came to our country in only the last 235 years. Well, I didn't realize that I was that old and came to Australia before that. I mean, I was born here, as were my parents. So I am as Indigenous to this land as the people writing this statement. And and here's the thing, the narrative that it was. Remember Anthony Albanese saying it was a gracious, modest request. And so we'll go down here to point number 4. Australia is our country. We accept that the majority of non-Indigenous voting Australians have rejected recognition in the Australian Constitution. We do not for one moment accept that this country is not ours. Well, it is yours. It's all of ours who are here. Always was, always will be. It is the legitimacy of the non-Indigenous occupation in this country that requires recognition, not the other way around, as sovereignty is never ceded. Again, this is basically the mask is off now, pardon the pun. They don't believe that Australia is legitimate at all. And the thing about, we'll get to the continuing and abandon treaty negotiations. Isn't it supposed to be a negotiation a two-way? I mean, they just put forward, this is what we demand, and if you reject it, then we're going to give you an almighty spray. So the Uluru Statement from the heart, that was just, Anthony Albanese just took it, put it forward. There was no negotiation with, well, the 97% of Australians who don't have Aboriginal blood. So that was number 4. And number 5, the Constitution still belongs to those who the Founding Fathers originally intended for and remains unchanged in our exclusion. We were asked to be recognised over a decade ago. We sought to be included in a meaningful way that has been rejected in refusing our people's right to be heard on matters that affect us. Australia chose to make itself less liberal and less democratic. Our right to be heard continues to exist both as a democratic imperative for this nation and inherent right to self-determination. The country cannot deny the former but not the latter. A founding document without recognition of First Peoples of this country continues the process of colonization. There is no clear reform of the Constitution that includes our people will ever succeed. This is the bitter lesson of October 14th. Well, the people who were Anthony Albanese picked for his referendum working group, they were not willing to compromise on anything. They wouldn't compromise on basic statement of recognition. So if that's apparently what you're bitter and twisted about, well, there could have been a symbolic recognition there. And in 1967, the exclusion of Aboriginal people was removed from the Constitution. They were counted in the census, and also the federal government could make laws for them. Number 6, I'll basically summarise that it blames the Liberal and National parties for not making the voice proposal bipartisan. Number 7 goes to lies in political advertising communication were a primary feature of this campaign. We know that the No campaign was funded and resourced by conservative and international interests have no stake or interest in the lives of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. That is extremely disingenuous. And it goes down here. There has always been racism against First Nations people in Australia. It increased with multiple daily instances during the campaign and was a powerful driver for the No campaign. But this campaign went just beyond racism. If you don't know, Vote No gave expression to ignorance and licensed the abandonment of civic responsibility on part of the many who voted no. This shameful victory belongs to the Institute of Public Affairs, the Centre of Independent Studies, and the mainstream media. I'm sure the Institute of Public Affairs and the Centre for Independent Studies will be very flattered that they were basically given a shout out by this rage statement. And it says, post-referendum commentaries that expelculate those who voted no were expected as the usual kind of post-election appropriation of the electorate. The truth is that the majority of Australians have committed a shameful act, whether knowingly or not, and there is nothing positive to be interpreted from it. We need truth to be told to the Australian people. And they say that we maintain the vision of the Uluru Statement from the heart. We'll continue to uphold the outcomes of the Uluru Dialogue. And it says that they want to establish a voice, they say, outside of the Constitution or legislation to take up the cause of justice for our people. Rejection of constitutional recognition will not deter us from speaking up to governments. Well, any Australian group, including Indigenous and non-Indigenous, can create their own voice lobby and lobby government. There was nothing stopping you before as well. And it says, we will regather in due course and deliver a plan for our future. Well, this moment will be etched in Australia's history forever. Today, we think of our children and our children's children. Our work continues as it has always done. We will continue to fight and seek justice for our peoples. We are the 3% of the population. You are the 97%. Continuing the us and them. Well, thankfully, these people they won't have a, because obviously if the voice got up, these are the types of people who would have got themselves on to the voice, the constitutionally enshrined voice, and they've revealed themselves to what type of people they are. And they spent a week formulating this statement. I mean, if their concern is for their people and the disadvantage, the crime, the disparagement in life expectancy, the lack of opportunities and jobs and disparities in services, why didn't they spend a week thinking, hey, let's think of some new ideas here? But they spent a week emailing each other. Let's see how vicious and bile-fueled we can make this statement. So now it's funny that they had a go at the mainstream media there, because they were most of the media was very much on board, including the ABC, of course. And another narrative that the media put forward is that, well, if no voters if they didn't vote on because they were racist, then they voted because they were ignorant and uneducated. And this is what I'll play first what Waleed Ali said on the project, and then Patricia Karvelas said on the ABC podcast, The Party Room.
The biggest dividing line seems to have been education. So if you are in a seat that had high levels of tertiary education, a bachelor or postgrad, then you were at the very top end of the yes vote. And if you had the lowest levels of tertiary education, you were at the low end of the yes vote. And that's not to say people who are educated know what they're doing and people who don't have tertiary education don't. It's about the style of the message, I think.
The yes vote, if you look at it, has been achieved in places where voters have a bachelor's degree or have better than average wages, and where you find educated people who know, if you've got a bachelor's degree, chances are you know something about government, our structures. You've taken an interest in the kind of way these things happen, not because you're better, but just because you've got the opportunity to have done that. Just to be clear, like, I'm not judging people's achievements. It's just you've been able to find out lots of information.
Yes, Patricia's not judging people's achievements, but you just don't know how our system of government works to make an informed decision. And Kos Samaras, the director at Redbridge, former Labor Party state deputy campaign director, said he actually defended Waleed Ali. Said he said he was talking about a fact: university degree coupled with geographic location and then age correlated heavily with a yes vote. He also nailed the underlying issue here, which of course most who are attacking him have completely overlooked. The method of communication had to be different to outer suburban communities. That was not because they are not intelligent. He spelt that wrong. Not and this is a guy who, well, considers himself, would probably consider himself part of the inner city, though he talks about how he was raised in poverty in the northern suburbs, but he spelt intelligent wrong. But are culturally different. The lifestyle of MPs, media, and the staffer class separates them from lived experience of outer suburban Australians. Yes 23 built a campaign that was great for the first group and not for the second. Just for the record, Kos, Waleed, and Patricia, I have a bachelor's degree. I know how Australia's system of government works and our constitutional arrangements, and that's exactly why I knew that this voice in the Constitution would be a bad thing, especially since the history of our High Court, whose job would it be to interpret whether the voice had been properly consulted and the decisions of government could be held up. Remember that the High Court in 1992 made up the Mabo decision, and in 1996 made up the Wick decision on native title. And I very much liked this article that was published in the Sydney Morning Herald by Parnell Palm McGuinness. She's probably easily my favorite columnist in a mainstream publication. And so she has written, post-voice, we need to confront uncomfortable truth. Let's start with Mabo. And she talks about when she spent a week in a remote Indigenous community, and just that there's feelings of generational helplessness. And she talks about Mabo and says that it applied an archaic mechanism of common law to recognise native title. And she quotes former Liberal Senator Nick Minchin and says, he said that common law title basically ended in England in the 1700s. He says real property rights have to be based on statute law. And the article, although Parnell doesn't say this, says that Australian lands, which are governed under native titles by those Aboriginal land councils, they're basically communist, mini communist nations outside of Australian law. So those Aboriginals living there have no property rights. They can't start a business to basically make a life for themselves, because in communism everything belongs to the collective land councils. And so basically, and when it comes to mining royalties and that, all that's centrally controlled by the land councils. And there's over the years been lots of corruption of the monies and royalties that have been collected by some councils. It quotes Warren Mundine here. He began to become dissolution 20 years ago about how the money was appropriated, or more like misappropriated, by various land councils, and it doesn't benefit the Aboriginal person living there. And remember that documentary, Red Over Black, about the communist roots of the Aboriginal land rights movement. Is it a coincidence that that native titles, that the lands in Australia are governed under native title, are run under basically like communist nations? I think not. Now, we had also some reaction at the state level. So obviously we have treaty negotiations in that were in process in Victoria through the First Peoples Assembly, paid their salaries paid for at our expense. So of course the Labor government here, the Allan government, they are of course proceeding. The Liberal opposition under John Prosciutto, they not sure yet whether they're going to recommit to a treaty. In the last term of Parliament, Matthew Guy, the opposition leader, he supported a treaty process. Again, this idea of that apparently Victoria, it doesn't exist because there is no treaty. But if you look at the photos of the members of the First Peoples Assembly of Victoria, almost all of them look to have mixed heritage. So what gives them the authority to, well, make a negotiation based on people 200 years ago? Like the only way to to basically bring legitimacy, if we're thinking logically here, is to go in a time machine 200 years ago. I mean, Victoria, Australia, it's happened, unless you're saying that the whole thing, the whole Victoria, Australia has been illegitimate. That's basically what it is there. Now, in Queensland, the LNP up there, state LNP under David Crisafulli, grew a spine. He is incredibly, I think, unimpressive. David Crisafulli never, even though they do well at a federal level, and remember, No got 69% in Queensland. Never underestimate the state Liberal National Party in Queensland, their propensity to lose elections at a state level. Crisafulli could still lose next year. He originally supported the treaty negotiations that the Palaszczuk government was entering into. But he pulled the pin this week, and so did Palaszczuk. That gave her a get out card, saying, well, it's no longer bipartisan, so we can't proceed. And even Chris Minns today, he is, even though last week he said that he had a election mandate from last election to negotiate a treaty, even though I'm sure that that's not what the people of New South Wales voted for earlier this year. They would have voted on a whole bunch of issues. I mean, the Voice referendum result is basically, well, it's a single issue vote. And obviously, Anthony Albanese, remember, he said this is what Indigenous people had asked for through the Uluru Statement from the Heart. So basically, this was a referendum on the Uluru Statement from the Heart as a whole. And if the first bit fails, then Anthony Albanese should ditch the other two, unless he wants to lose the next election. But Chris Minns today said, oh, treaty negotiations won't begin until after the 2027 state election. So New South Welsh people, you'll have an opposition to cast your judgment on whether you want a treaty in 2027, though the Liberal moderates in New South Wales, they pretty much run the joint. And Mark Speakman, he voted yes, the opposition leader. Remember, Dominic Perrottet, former Liberal New South Wales Premier, he supported the Voice. So did his former Deputy Matt Keane. But according to Kos Samaras, he claims that the Liberal Party right across the country is taking the wrong lessons from the referendum result. Walking away from treaty in Victoria, LNP opposition leaders now refusing to commit. Last year, our polling found 63.5% of voters in the Labor heartland seats of Melton, Narre Warren, North and Pakenham, Point Cook and Werribee wanted the then Andrews government to be more ambitious on advancing the treaty process with First Nations Victorians. These findings also suggest what happened out there in the suburbs on the weekend may indeed have little to do with voters' personal support for closing the gap. Well, I would say, Kos, you and Redbridge need to run that poll again, because remember a year ago, the polls found that the Voice was running at 60% support, and No in the end had a 60% support. Now, as I know that Joel Davis and Blair Cottrell, they've talked about a lot of after this referendum process, a lot of Australians are feeling Aboriginal fatigue. I certainly am, and I think there is a lot of Australians who, at the end, thought we've given them so much over the years. Like, we're the ones who've extended the hands of friendship, and we've given them so many billions of our tax dollars, and they're always saying, no, it's not good enough. We're demanding this, we're demanding that, we want more. And so this is why I think Tony Abbott wrote about this in The Australian. Now it's time for a rollback on, I think, definitely all treaty negotiations should end, because that's saying that Australia is not legitimate, which the Australian people overwhelmingly rejected. They liked our constitution just the way it is. We should also ditch the welcome to countries. I want to see no more Uncle Colin at the AFL special games. Also, we shouldn't have the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander flag fly at the same level as the Australian flag. I mean, we have one flag, the Australian flag, that should be the one that flies solely on its own. And also at government press conferences, when I visited the Treasury Place, when I remember Bernie Finn made a speech outside Jacinta Allen's office during the March for the Babies. So there was the outside her office, there was the Australian flag, the Victorian flag, the Aboriginal flag, and the Torres Strait Islander flag, and the Pride Progress flag. When did that? And this is the extension. Like, is that going to be is there going to be extra flags that are going to be at press conferences here? I mean, seriously, we need to go back to being one nation again. Pardon the pun. Australia's sovereignty over, we need to get rid of all of this communist native title. We need to be one Australia, one law, every citizen equal. That's what we need here. And Jacinta Price, she this week, she put up two motions in the Senate, one for an audit of the $40 billion that is being spent on Aboriginal affairs every year. Where's the money going? I mean, we're not seeing the gap being closed. And she also called for a royal commission into child sexual abuse in remote Aboriginal communities. And we also had the Aboriginal grievance industry this week. They also seized upon, there was this 16-year-old Aboriginal boy, Cleveland Dodd, who self-harmed in custody. So it's according to the Western Australian media, this is the notorious Unit 18. So the reason that he was there is because. So it says here, Unit 18 and Banksia Hill have been plagued by high rates of self-harm incidents and detainees being placed into prolonged lockdowns. And so the Premier has said that housing youth detainees in adult prisons is a necessary evil. Though you had the usual, Amnesty International claiming the Premier has blood on his hands, and the boy's family said he was a beloved boy and had never self-harmed before being unlawfully locked down inside Unit 18. There's nothing in this article about what he did to end up in an adult prison as a juvenile. I'm sure it wasn't just because he stole a chocolate bar at the local supermarket. And so it's going up here. You have so there's going to be a coronial inquest, but so you have one of the family members, Mervyn Abraham, said a 16-year-old just in the early part of his adult life, he's gone for whatever reasons, and it just doesn't make sense. The system was supposed to rehabilitate and protect, but it's failing our most vulnerable and our future generations. So see there, he was a good boy who didn't do nothing, and yeah. Now, I was listening to 3AW this morning, and so they obviously it's being predicted to have a terrible bushfire season because of global boiling. Now, residents in Goldie, which is located between Lancefield and Kilmore in Melbourne's north, they've been waiting for years for a mobile phone tower to be built so that emergency communications can be broadcast and sent and received during bushfires and other emergencies. But I was listening to this interview this morning with so Neil Mitchell interviewed a local volunteer firefighter, Richard Thornton, and said part of the delay is due to Telstra's negotiations with the traditional owners. So these traditional owners, they don't care that having this mobile phone tower can be the difference between life and death. I mean, what the hell? Seriously. I mean, that is just ridiculous. And of course, Victoria is still the worst for having these the land giveaway to traditional owners, having to consult. Obviously, in Western Australia, it's been formally rescinded now. That Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act, which basically, if a miner or a pastoralist wanted to, any major operations, they had to consult some appointed Aboriginal cultural evaluator. Again, a racket. Now, Lydia Thorpe, remember, she was a progressive no, and now she was supposed to be on Q&A last Monday night, but she pulled out. She said, I am not protected from a far-right Nazi terrorist organization. That's why I can't do Q&A tonight. Yes, but it was interesting, though, because Lydia Thorpe, so she said that she couldn't, even though a television studio is probably one of the safest and most secure places she can be, she was again prepared to be out in public in Melbourne at a public rally on Saturday at one of the public housing towers on Harmsworth Street, Collingwood. So this called an emergency rally, Save Our Public Housing, because Dan Andrews announced one of his last acts as Premier. He wants to knock down the old 60s public housing towers and rebuild them in a more modern styles. So Lydia Thorpe was speaking there, and Gabrielle De Vito of the Victorian Greens was there speaking as well. But it's an emergency rally. They're not going to building 7 all the public housing towers on like today. I mean, seriously, chill out there. Now, of course, obviously, we've had the reasons why the no vote succeeded. Well, because there's so many racists still in Australia, and also because, well, people too stupid to know that the voice was good. But of course, there is the old mis and disinformation. And Anthony Albanese was asked a question by Teal Independent Zali Steggall, because she is wanting to introduce truth in political advertising, stop the lies laws, which she says that political parties shouldn't be able to tell lies in political ads. But who decides what's the truth in political advertising? The Australian Electoral Commission, who were clearly so biased in favour of the voice. I mean, it's regulating free speech in an election. If you believe the other side is lying, then you say that they're lying. I mean, this is the whole thing. And both sides have engaged in scare campaigns over the years. You remember Labor's Medi-Scare. And so this was Anthony Albanese's response to Zali Steggall's question.
And I certainly understand her perspective, because it is a concern with the changing media environment as well, that people can be the subject to misinformation, which in some cases is just about politics, but in some cases can be dangerous. And
Order. Members on my left.
Well, perhaps I wasn't going to give a specific example, but I will.
Order.
I will. During the recent campaign, there was a photograph with the Star of David across 8 Australians' faces: Mark Liebler, Thomas Mayo, Anthony Pratt, Justice Stephen Rothman, Julian Lisa, Josh Burns, Kim Rubenstein and Mark Dreyfus. This is what it said: all of the major creators, financiers and supporters of the Voice to Parliament are Jewish. Ask yourself why 0.38% of Australia's population is using 3% as a battering ram against the rest of the country every single time, full stop. Before that, in the explanation, before the ad, the account said this: just a totally organic coincidence, spelt COHENCIDENCE, for the betterment of Australia, and totally not the latest chapter in the 1,000-year-old hate and attempted destruction of white people. Mr. Speaker,
Order. Members on my left.
Mr. Speaker, the question that has been asked by the member for Warringah goes to a serious question of what, and everyone in this parliament would find that totally abhorrent, which is why are you interjecting at this point in time?
The member for Petrie.
The member for... I'm not going to give a free ad to those people. I wasn't going to go through. There's a number of them along those lines. Now, when it comes to the challenge which we have of dealing with this, it's complex. You don't want to interfere with any freedom of expression, but you also want to make sure that elections can be held and democratic processes can be held in an appropriate way. Now, the minister is undertaking appropriate processes to deal with that, and I look forward to working with the member for Warringah.
Yeah, so Anthony Albanese says Mark Dreyfus is working on a response, so watch this space. Obviously, there is the draft mis- and disinformation bill, which would give ACMA the power to shut down or take down social media posts that are deemed harmful for a wide variety of reasons. And I noticed that a lot of people were reacting to Anne Ali on sitting behind Anthony Albanese, reacting to that. She's got the shocked look on her face. And Joel Davis and Blair Cottrell and Tom Sewell, they also played this on their stream, and they highlighted that Anne Ali, she's a Muslim, and so they speculated that maybe she was overacting there. So she's a minister, and by coincidence, it was her and Ed Husick, who said last week, two Muslim members of the Albanese government said that they didn't want the people of Gaza collectively punished by the Israeli, the IDF, for the actions of Hamas. And when I said coincidence there, it's not in the way that Anthony Albanese spelled it out there. And yeah, I couldn't believe that he spelled it out. And this is forever in Australia's Parliament Hansard. There it is there. Question without notice, political advertising. And it's got Anthony Albanese spelling out coincidence there. Now, I did see this meme a number of weeks ago. It was put out there by the Izifka account, which is the economic zone formerly known as Australia. Now, they didn't create this meme, but they distributed it more widely and also added their own comments at the top there. And now, obviously, we saw the ABC especially claim that Australians were succumbing to white supremacist propaganda against The Voice. That was also put forward as one of the reasons before the referendum, that if no gets up, it's because of this. And Joel, Tom, and Blair, they gave themselves a pat on the back for their influence and also blacklisted research. And they're not just saying that because, they're not saying that because they have big egos. They're saying because their enemies gave them credit for their influence. So if your enemies are saying, oh, look what you did, then you should say, well, thank you for the credit. Now, we had on the weekend the Nazi salute ban come into effect in Victoria, which I know that Blair Cottrell, he posted on his Telegram a link to so it's a complete ban on Nazi symbols and gestures, any that are associated with the Nazi Party, the National Socialist German Workers' Party, and it says that a person must not intentionally perform a Nazi gesture if the person knows or ought to reasonably know that the gesture is a Nazi gesture, the performance occurs in a public place, a non-government school, or a post-secondary education institution, occurs in the sight of a person who is in a public place of a non-government school or post-secondary education institution. But a person does not contravene this section if the display of performance was engaged in reasonably in good faith for genuine academic, artistic, or educational scientific purpose. or if the display of the Nazi symbol was engaged in reasonably and in good faith for a genuine cultural or religious purpose, or if the display of the Nazi symbol or a Nazi gesture was engaged in reasonably and in good faith in opposition to fascism, Nazism, Nazism, or other related ideologies. So Antifa and the communists, they can still have the swastika at their rallies if it's clear that they are showing it as in demonstration of their opposition to it. So it gives examples here. A person displays a flag of Nazi Germany with a marking through it to signal the person's opposition. A person participating in a protest displays a Nazi symbol on a placard, which also contains wording stating opposition to fascism. A person who displays the pink triangle used by the LGBTQ plus communities. We have now in Victoria the Nazi symbol and Nazi gesture ban. Maximum penalty is a year. Let me just make sure that I get this right here. So the contravening of this section here. If I go further down here, so it was fast-tracked, the ban through the Victorian Parliament. So it took effect as soon as it got royal assent. So the maximum penalty is a year in prison or $23,000 fine. But even though these laws are in effect, there's the Racial and Religious Tolerance Act, which because Jews are both a ethnicity and a religion, they can be covered by both racial and religious vilification. But according to Devere Abramovich of the Anti-Defamation Commission, there is not enough laws against hate speech and vilification in Victoria. Here he was on 7 News.
Melbourne's Jewish community is calling for tougher hate speech laws as the Middle East conflict raises tensions here. They've accused some pro-Palestinian supporters of anti-Semitism and openly supporting terrorists.
When this intimidating group performed the Nazi salute in Melbourne last weekend, it wasn't illegal. Now it is.
I'm putting people on notice that if that was to occur as of today, moving forward in the state of Victoria, police will be taking action.
But some in the Jewish community are concerned anti-Semitism is creeping into some pro-Palestine protests unchecked.
We are seeing people supporting terrorist organisations openly and brazenly. I call on the Victorian government to review anti-vilification laws.
If there have been any anti-Semitic chants, we would disavow those people from our movement. There's no room for racism in our movement or in Australia.
Police are facing calls from the Zionist Federation of Australia to crack down on hate speech under Victoria's Racial and Religious Act. The President saying, "We're concerned that authorities have not taken action against those whose actions are clearly criminal. We need to ask, is the problem with the legislation political will or resources?"
Police apply the law that's available to us in the state of Victoria. Everything needs to be considered on the facts and circumstances that exist in any one particular matter. Victoria Police favour no side in these arguments.
The issue is not Victoria Police, the issue are the laws.
The state government is currently considering reforms to strengthen anti-vilification laws.
I am aware that this legislation is currently under consideration for expansion.
Sarah Jane Bell, 7 News.
Now, Holocaust denial is still not illegal in Victoria, but that could be next. I know that a while back, National Socialist Network members Nathan Bull and Michael Mickle, who hosts White Australia First, they wore T-shirts in public when they were attending that Iranian women's rights rally. They wore T-shirts which said 6 million a bit much. So that'll probably be the next to be illegal, because they're not technically shirts that are associated with the National Socialist German Workers' Party. Now, the Victoria Police Deputy Commissioner you saw there was Neil Patterson, and so he said that, look, we've referred instances of racial and religious vilification to the Director of Public Prosecutions, but they've knocked back our requests. So basically saying, don't blame us. We're doing our job, and it's the DPP. And so we had obviously Neil Patterson saying that he's aware of legislation that is before the Parliament to strengthen anti-vilification laws. I saw Senator Slayer up here ask whether homophobia is illegal yet. Well, that's the next step. The Fiona Patten in the last Parliament, she proposed the Racial and Religious Tolerance Amendment Act, which would cover sexuality, gender identity, disability, sex, everything, you name it. And now, I'm sure that Neil Patterson would obviously personally like anti-vilification laws extended to gay people. Now, the National Socialist Network call Victoria Police uphold the anal sex. When it comes to Deputy Commissioner Neil Patterson, he literally does uphold the anal sex. He was instrumental in getting a Catholic policeman, Sergeant Bruno Staffiri, fired. He was found guilty of misconduct charges by Victoria Police's internal disciplinary panel. Neil Patterson oversees police internal affairs. And so Staffiri was supported by the Australian Christian Lobby and by Tony Carboni of Carboni Lawyers. And so apparently his comments that offended Neil Patterson greatly. So a Safari who was recently based with the Transit Safety Division found himself in hot water over his public criticism of the Andrews government decision to cancel Australia Day and Anzac Day celebrations in 2021, but allow the Gay Pride March in St Kilda to proceed. And so this is Stefari said, so the next time Australians are sent to fight a war, maybe we can send out the 8,000 that march today and try to stop the enemy by waving feathers and brightly coloured bows at them. And then Neil Patterson, is the state's second highest ranking officer. So this was on the police internal Yammer system. So he said that Victoria Police was proud to have been recognised as a silver employer at the 2021 Australia LGBTQ Inclusion Awards. And Stefari responded, yes, I agree, great achievement, but if the public knew how much time, effort and taxpayer dollars went into this, they would also be demanding, why didn't we get a gold? And so Patterson, of course, defended his campaign, and Stefari responded, so I totally value and respect your opinion and your rank. I simply ask that you value and respect mine. And Patterson replied, I don't respect or value your views as they are offensive. There is no place for those in Victoria Police. Either you limit your comments on Yammer to comments that are respectful of everyone or consider your employment options. And Stefari was also investigated over a Facebook post last March regarding an ABC report on a teacher who founded a gay pride group for students in a Western Sydney school. He said, what a disgrace. Bad enough having gay non-binary teachers, but to have them push their filth on students is a disgraceful crime. Can't we sack these teachers? He posted. So yes, and he also accused senior figures in Force Command, including Patterson, of contributing to a patriarchal, narrow-minded, intolerant culture within Victoria Police regarding perspectives on LGBTQ morality, and in doing so having placed their own interests above the community good. I come from a very strong religious background and take personal sufferance when people mock or deny my God in his teachings. I would say that his comments there are pretty accurate, and Neil Patterson, it seems, got him sacked from Victoria Police, and that is not the only time that Neil Patterson has thrown his weight around. He reduced a Red Cross blood donation worker to tears. She was in a cafe area at Victoria Police headquarters in Spencer Street. This was back in December last year. So Mr. Patterson said he was approached and asked to donate by the representatives while on a coffee line in a cafe. He said, in my response, I made a comment to the Red Cross representatives that I did not agree with their donor policy. As a proud gay man, I find it upsetting that I cannot give blood, something I did before coming out as gay. Mr. Patterson felt the policy was discriminatory when all he and other gay men wanted to do was to help save lives. I simply said my view on the policy. I apologize if I upset her. This was not my intention, and there was no indication at the time that she was impacted by my comment. So it goes here. Australia Red Cross Lifeblood is looking at what changes it can make to allow more gay and bisexual men to donate. Advocates say the policy stigmatizes gay men, and the abstinence rule could be replaced by individual risk assessment system. They say donors could be screened on their sexual activity to reduce the risk of HIV transmission. So I think the rule currently is that gay and bisexual men cannot donate if they've had homosexual sex in the past 6 months. So yes. And that is a bit of insight into Deputy Commissioner Neil Patterson, who was featured on that 7 News report, and he probably fancies himself as a future police commissioner, chief commissioner of Victoria, and he'd probably, trumpet his horn there to say, "Oh, I'm the first gay police chief commissioner in Australia." Now, Victoria Police, one of their recent prosecutions has been of Jacob Hershnet, who is actually the founder of the National Socialist Network. He has been unable to associate with other National Socialist Network members because he has been a witness in the case against Thomas Sewell when he was charged with armed robbery and held in solitary confinement for 7 months. That was over when there was 3 Antifa who followed and stalked the National Socialist Network on a camping trip to Cathedral Ranges. Both Thomas Sewell and Jacob Hershnet have pleaded guilty to violent disorder, and will be sentenced definitely this Friday in the county court. So definitely it's because it's from May 2021, so almost 2.5 years that will be resolved. Last week, Jacob Hershnet he was convicted of stickering. He was given a $3,000 fine. This is an update from Thomas Sewell. So they destroyed 1,000 of his stickers, a sticker printer, a pair of headphones, a pair of boots, a laptop, and a small notebook. And Tom Sewell says Jacob challenged them on this forfeiture, and it turns out they cannot legally confiscate or destroy anything under the summary charge of bill postering. So after being found guilty of a horrific sticker terrorism offence, the police have had to hand Jacob back his 1,000 stickers and sticker printer. And so it's funny how the socialist alternative, they never get charged with bill postering for all of the crap that they put up on university campuses. That's where Jacob Hirschnet was putting up these stickers. We also had last week, we had the Age and Sydney Morning Herald, Nick McKenzie, exclusive. It reported that Stefan Arakilis, Australian Meditation, was charged with criminal damage after public toilets inside Mill Park Library on Plenty Room were allegedly graffitied with anti-Semitic slurs on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So it says, Arakilis, 30 from Mernda, was bailed to appear at Heidelberg Magistrates Court on March 19 next year. Remember, he is also facing charges of using a carriage service to offend Lydia Thorpe over the original Warriors of the Convict Resistance video in January 2022. There's no charges being laid over the most recent one, which the ABC investigations, quoting Cass Ross, she said it was certain that it was Jamone Roberts in the video based on the study of her physique and the way he pronounces words. So it was so that is that happened last week, and if he ends up being charged, Australian Meditations, with because it doesn't mention if he was drawing swastikas, if he is going to be the first to be charged under the Nazi symbol ban, that would be an interesting first test case, whether they would aim to imprison him. Now, where are we at now? So, yeah, we're up to, the Israel-Palestine conflict. So the Israel-Hamas war. So Israel is striking a Hamas targets in, they've told all the Palestinians in Gaza to go to southern Gaza. There, of course, was the hospital, the alleged hospital missile. Now, originally, the mainstream media reported the Hamas propaganda that Israel struck the hospital. That was not true at all. That was propaganda, fake news. So it was actually a misfire by a different terrorist group in Gaza, the Islamic Jihad, and actually didn't hit the hospital. It hit the car park, though the Hamas propaganda machine obviously got all the international media to go into the hospital and say, look, the hospital's been hit there. And so this is BBC Verify, which, I mean, if the BBC is saying that it didn't actually hit the hospital and it was by Islamic Jihad, then you can trust the BBC's telling the truth here. So in Australia, in major cities, every weekend now, there's Free Palestine rallies, and there are some hilarious groups and people that are attending. Last Sunday in Melbourne, there was this group, so Queer Jews Against Pink-Washing Israeli Apartheid, and you can see they've chosen there, instead of the Palestinian red triangle on the flag, they've chosen the Nazi pink triangle. Remember, it's okay for them to use it because they're using it in opposition to, obviously, Nazism. Then this Sunday, we had Queer Trans Jew for a Free Palestine, and then also this is probably what takes the cake. Sex workers support a Free Palestine. Like, are we sure these are not satirists? Like, how can these signs be serious? We don't know, but it's utterly hilarious. Will these queer? I'm sure that there'd be some Zionists who'd be prepared to. Well, if you stand with Palestine, you queer, trans, Jews, and sex workers, I'll buy you some tickets there to go to Gaza. see how you cope there. Now, Greta Thunberg, because obviously a global boiling is over for another year. She obviously tries to jump on what she believes is the fashionable trend. So she said, I'll try to do my Greta voice. Week 270. Today we strike in solidarity with Palestine and Gaza. The world needs to speak up and call for an immediate ceasefire, justice and freedom for Palestinians and all civilians affected. Hashtag Free Palestine. I stand with Palestine. I stand with Gaza. Fridays for Future. So one of her friends there has a sign. This Jew stands with Palestine. One in the background says Free Palestine. Another one has the standard Climate Justice Now, and she has a sign which says Stand with Gaza. And she's got a toy octopus behind her. And Greta had no knowledge that that an octopus was a anti-Semitic trope, which goes back a couple of centuries and was used in it was a cartoon used in Nazi supporting newspapers in Germany, so it probably would be covered by the Nazi symbol ban. I know that Thomas Sewell posted on his Tom Sewell alerts that the octopus was the new symbol of counter-Semitism. If the National Socialist Network did decide to display those in public, I reckon Victoria Police would probably get them on the Nazi symbol ban there. But Greta says that she had no idea and that it's an autism support toy, but it's too late now. Greta is in the process of being cancelled, and so it's been reported from the Jerusalem Post that Israel has removed Greta Thunberg from its school curriculum over anti-Israel post. And so the Ministry of Education says Hamas is a terrorist organization responsible for the murder of 1,400 innocent Israelis, including children, women, and the elderly. This stance disqualifies her from being an educational and moral role model, and she is no longer eligible to serve as an inspirational and educator for Israeli students. So Greta, cancelled. There we go. And over in the US, we have many of the Con Inc. Figures cancelling any conservatives who step out of line in 100% supporting Israel. And Nick Fuentes of America First called out Dave Rubin of the Rubin Report.
And I got a tip earlier from somebody today, I'm not going to say who, but I got a tip that Dave Rubin, who you may know, Rubin Report, he's with DeSantis, who's a gay Jew. Dave Rubin is going around and calling people and trying to get certain conservatives fired from their job because they took the wrong position on Israel. This is a guy who, for years, his whole position was, I may be a liberal, but we ought to be able to have a conversation. This is just amazing. We get to have right and left people are having a conversation. Isn't this crazy? Don't burn this book. He says, don't burn this book. Let the right and the left talk. Now he's picking up the phone and saying, Oy vey, shut it down. Get him fired from his job. He's an anti-Semite. He's anti-Semitic. Get him fired. Dave Rubin, the gay Jew who kidnapped children. He calls them adopted. I think that's kidnapping.
And this is why the Groypers and Nick Fuentes came to prominence in 2019 during the Great Groyper War. They exposed the hollowness of Con Inc.'s claim of free speech because, of course, Ben Shapiro and Charlie Kirk, they loved dumb libtard students. Asking them questions were easily destroyed. But when the Catholic Groypers turned up, saying, why are we giving all this money to Israel all the time? There's this foreign aid, but they all had to be shut down, and the Groypers were purged from the audience. Joe Biden in an address to the nation, says that we can continue to support both wars, Israel's war in Gaza and also supporting Zelensky in Ukraine. And also he wants some money for Taiwan and border funding as well, $100 billion, an extra $100 billion. But the thing is that the US Congress can't function at the moment because they still don't have a speaker. Jim Jordan, he withdrew because the Rhino Republicans wouldn't support him. So, oh no, the House of Representatives can't give away more US taxpayer money. Well, it's more borrowed money from the US debt. What is that? It's at 45 trillion something. So, oh no, it can't spend more money, the Congress, that the US government doesn't have, and that the US taxpayer will have to pay back eventually or default. And there's either one or two options: either pay it back or default, which would cripple the United States and the US dollar as the nation's reserve currency. Now, there was another insurrection at the US Capitol of pro-Palestine protesters demanding a ceasefire. And trigger warning, I mean, this is, I think what you're about to see is worse than the Civil War, Pearl Harbor, and 9/11 combined. So will they all be put in prison for 20 years, like the January 6th, those who were prosecuted over entering the Capitol on January 6th? Because that's the standard there. I mean, any protesters inside any Capitol grounds now is an insurrection. So will they be put in solitary confinement and sentenced to 20 years? Now, obviously, one American that they are wanting to put in prison for the rest of his life is former US President Donald Trump. So obviously there is that civil court case brought by the New York Attorney General, basically trying to confiscate his business assets, claiming that he inflated his wealth to get favorable business loans. So they're wanting to take Trump Tower and Mar-a-Lago off him. That won't see him in prison, but it's wanting to steal his wealth, which is, well, what communists always want to do. So the latest criminal charge that was slapped upon him was, of course, the RICO charges in the state of Georgia, and they indicted many members of his campaign team and lawyers. And now we have had one of the most high-profile defendants, Sidney Powell. She has pled guilty, and as part of the plea deal, so she will be on probation for 6 years and pay a $6,000 fine and write an apology letter to the state of Georgia. And she has agreed to testify truthfully against the other 18 co-defendants. And so last month there was another Georgia RICO co-defendant, Scott Hall, the bail bondsman from Coffee County, Georgia, pleaded guilty. So obviously, Sidney Powell, she was the one that made the most out there accusations of election fraud, which obviously led to Dominion Voting Systems and Smartmatic launching lawsuits against her, Fox News, and also Mike Lindell. I think might be leaving other people out as well. And remember, she said that she was going to release the Kraken, in which that Kraken fizzled out as much as the Kraken COVID variant. Now let's go over to the UK, where they had another weekend of pro-Palestine rallies in London, and of course, Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman, we stand with Israel. Where they will be prosecuted. Those who are out there trying to support Hamas. I mean, as I said last week, when Suella Braverman says, "I'm going to go after these people," I mean, that's a track record. I mean, that's an empty threat. I mean, being basically threatened by Suella Braverman with law enforcement action is like being hit with a wet lettuce. So the Met Police, which are under the control of the Muslim Lord Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, so they put out a social media post which they claimed that the word jihad has a number of meanings, but we know the public will most commonly associate it with terrorism. We have specialist counter-terrorism office here in the operations room, in particular knowledge in this area. They have assessed this video filmed at the Hizb ut-Tahrir protest in central London today, not identified any offences arising from the specific clip. However, recognizing the way language like this will be interpreted by the public and the physical impact it will have, officers have identified the man involved and will be speaking to him shortly to discourage any repeat of similar chanting. So apparently jihad, calling for jihad, isn't terrorist incitement according to the Metropolitan Police. But what will get you arrested by the Metropolitan Police is displaying the English flag near where a pro-Palestine event is happening.
So you can hear me, right? For the moment, anything racist or even close to racism is said. Hang on, let me finish. For the moment, anything gets anything close to that, all right? People are going to start getting arrested. This is just a verbal warning to let you know we're all on the same.
So that's basically the same thing as in the Melbourne CBD on Australia Day. You can't bring an Australian flag into the Melbourne CBD because the anti-Australian warriors, the Aboriginal resistance, Antifa thugs, totalitarian, rule the Melbourne CBD. It's basically given to them on that day by the state Labor government. Remember, Ricky T almost got lynched on the steps of Flinders Street Station on Australia Day 2019 for displaying the Australian flag on Australia Day in front of an iconic Australian building, and Victoria Police took him away. It was absolutely disgusting. And now the useless Rishi Sunak government, they lost two by-elections that were held last Thursday, super safe Tory seats. So the mid Bedfordshire by-election, which was triggered by the resignation of Nadine Dorries, a Boris Johnson loyalist. So the Labor Party have managed to win this. This was considered very safe. And there was also the Tamworth by-election, which was triggered by the resignation of Christopher Pincher, and he was another one of the sex scandals. It was the final one of Boris Johnson's premiership. He was revealed. It became more widely known that he had, pinched men on the bottom. So it was a doozy of a name, Pincher the Pincher. And so incredibly safe Conservative seat, Tamworth, won by the Labor Party. So the general election has to be held by the end of next year. The Tories are dead as a dodo. And if Rishi Sunak thought that the sex scandals were over with the end of Boris Johnson's premiership, there is another one. Tory MP, he has another doozy name, Peter Bone. He allegedly showed his boner to a staffer during a trip to Madrid. They were sharing a single hotel room, and when he came out of the shower, his towel fell off and displayed his boner. And so he has been suspended from the House of Commons for 60 days. Now, Peter Bone has denied flashing his boner. He's also denied other bullying allegations that he requested massages and threw pens and other office equipment at his victim. And he's a social conservative MP as well, Peter Bone. So they deserve to lose. The Labor, they deserve to lose the Tory government to the Labor Party at the next general election. They are completely useless. I know that Lady of Shalott and Dawn Browning are British expats. I'm not sure about you, but this is one of the worst British governments in living memory. They are absolutely hopeless. I mean, they need to be turfed out. I mean, obviously, Sir Keir Starmer and Labor will probably be a bit worse, but they definitely need to be punished. The Conservative Party and thrown out. They're going to lose the next election. The Tories are as dead as a dodo, and the British public are waiting with baseball bats to vote them out, to use an Australian political terminology. And if Anthony Albanese back here at home doesn't pull his head in after the Voice referendum and still continues to, basically even though he's been rebuked by the Australian people, just continues to do whatever the referendum working group, the people who run the Uluru Statement tell him to do, then he is going to be voted out at the next election. I mean, it's been a week and there's been nothing on cost of living. There was a Roy Morgan poll released today, which Roy Morgan, you should take their polls with a grain of salt, but actually had the LNP ahead, two-party preferred 50.5% to Albanese 49.5%. The week after the referendum, which is, I'd be interested to see some other polling, whether there is if this Morgan poll is another rogue poll. I'd be interested to see whether there has been a collapse in support for Albanese and the Labor Party, given that he still cannot shut up about losing the Voice referendum and just still wants to do whatever the referendum working group, the Uluru Statement people, want him to do. Well, to disappear, he wants to disappear from his problems. So Airbus Elbow is back. So he is over in the United States, Washington, D.C., for a state dinner with Joe Biden. Then next month, he is off to China to meet with Xi Jinping. And he obviously thinks that things are getting better with the CCP. They released Australian journalist Cheng Lei, who was imprisoned on bogus espionage charges for 3 years, and Trade Minister Don Farrell. He trumpeted today that China hasn't lifted the wine, the ban on Australian wine, but they are reviewing it. So Don Farrell is very, very enthusiastic about that. Remember, Don Farrell is the one that he went up to Dermot Brereton at the AFL Grand Final and said, take a photo with me. I'm the Trade Minister. You have to have a photo taken with me, and was a real prima donna. Also, just going back to the UK last week, I'm not sure if you saw that Douglas Murray, when he was giving the Roger Scruton lecture at Oxford, had Kevin Spacey appear as a surprise guest. Kevin Spacey is back in acting now after he's found not guilty of sexual assault charges in the UK, and during a civil case was found not guilty of sexually assaulting actor Anthony Rapt when he was 14. That was the original accusation that saw lots of allegations come against Kevin Spacey and saw him cancelled, though there was a number of Spacey accusers who mysteriously died. And I saw that Joel Davis, he reshared a post that Unity News Network posted on Telegram. I want to get the founder and operator of Unity News Network on an episode of Wilms Front soon, because he seems like an independent thinker in the UK. Which is good. So Joel Davis said, right-wing homosexuals can't help themselves but subvertly rationalize their degeneracy. They can never just accept that the rest of us are disgusted by their perversions and can at best pretend that they're not gay, but just weird so long as they keep it closeted and laugh as a normal person. But that's not good enough for them, so they have to push the boundaries. Our forefathers executed them for reason. That's a bit much, Joel. Though I'm not sure about Douglas Murray's sexual proclivities. I mean, obviously he's openly gay, but I don't know. I don't know anything about his personal life, which is probably the better. And obviously, Kevin Spacey, is clearly a deviant and degenerate, but we have to treat him as innocent because he was found innocent. And if we're prepared to give the innocent to proven guilty due process to Russell Brand, we should give it to Kevin Spacey as well, regardless of sexuality. Hadron Anti-Bullying says, I don't know what time this show even starts now. It starts at 9 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time, and which is, I'm not sure which state you're based in, but YouTube doesn't automatically adjust for daylight savings. So I actually have to set when I schedule it on StreamYard, I have to schedule it to start at 8 p.m., which is Australian Eastern Standard Time. So I know that Mel McPhee is based in Queensland. So for a Queensland streamer such as the Dusty Bogan, he can set his streams to start at 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time and everything's. But yes, for us with daylight savings, YouTube and StreamYard is not considerate of us. Now, tomorrow night, there will be no theorists with myself and Andy Nolch, because Andy is up in Queensland to film his Great Barrier Reef documentary. I'm not sure he's got for his camera girl. Has he got Monica Schmidt as his camera girl, or has he got Dia Beltran as his camera girl, or has he got some other girl to do the camera work for him? I'll ask him when he gets back, so it'll be in a fortnight's time. And remember, if you've got any Wilms Front guest suggestions, please let me know either in the comments or on Telegram. Remember, you can always DM me at Tim Wilms. So I'll next see you live next Monday, 9 p.m. Melbourne time on the Wilms Front channels, and then the Theorists will be back 9 p.m. Tuesday on the Theorist channels, and that will be our Halloween special shows, because next Tuesday, October the 31st, it'll be Halloween. So I've got a costume ready for our Halloween shows next week. So as you know, I love Halloween. I think that, well, it's an excuse for fun for both children and adults. So I'll see you for our Halloween specials of Tim's News Explosion, and also the theorist next week. There'll be a new report from Tiger Mount with Richard Wollstonecroft coming up later this week. Now, remember, if you want to support the work of the Unshackled, but don't want to send through a super chat via Entropy, you can take out an Unshackled membership. So bronze $5 per month, silver $10 per month, gold $25 per month, platinum $50 per month. So the unshackled.net/membership. And of course, the unshackled.net has our Unshackled Productions archive and also our articles as well. I hope you enjoyed my Wilmsfront interview with Kira Lee Smith last night. So the live replay is available on the Wilmsfront channels. And remember, if you have any other guest suggestions, please let me know. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching again. Your comments throughout the show. Vignal says, unshackled. Well, Joel Davis asked for money as well through his super chats and power chats. I'm not like Avi, who asks for money every 5 minutes. I mean, there's basically every single video he does. He asks for money there. There's a few suggestions for for Halloween costumes. You'll just have to wait until next week. So good night, everybody. Stay safe, stay sane, and stay happy. And it's obviously the weather is temperamental here in Melbourne. So depending on the weather, stay warm or stay cool. Good night, everybody.
Tim's News Explosion. 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 Tim's News Explosion.